Hello and welcome to Inside the Recording Studio. I am Jody Whitesides and with me is Mr. Chris Hellstrom, and today we are talking about mic models or modeling mics or mics that model other mics. That's really kind of like the gist of this, but before we get there, I want to say, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, this is
Thank
good.
you. That was a very energetic intro there. I'm going to have an extra sip of coffee here soon to kind of keep up with you. But no, I'm doing good. How are you doing, Jody?
I'm all right. I was playing pickleball this morning, so I've already like amped up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you're gonna fade quickly here in about halfway through the show, maybe.
Oh, I hope not.
Me neither.
That'd be bad. Very, very bad. Pickleball
I'm gonna
good.
have to
Recording
pull
good.
this to. I'm gonna have to pull this to the goal line myself here, maybe.
Yes, we're gonna put the cross and let you bear it.
How did you fare today with your pickleball adventures?
It was a rough day. I was playing with a lot of people consider, if we're going to go on a whole side note here. So there's
Let's
a ranking
start on
system.
a side note right away. Right?
There's like a ranking system, and a lot of people understand the ranking system in tennis is like you get 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, 4-5, 5-0, 5-5, and 6, I think, or something of that nature. I am considered to be probably somewhere between 4-5 and 5-0. And there's like this massive leap from 4-9 to 5-0, I would think, but they really don't go at the dots between 5 and the 0.5 and the .0. And I was invited to play with several 5-0s today, and it was not necessarily demoralizing, but it was certainly harder.
It was rough going. Yeah. All right.
It was a little bit harder. So,
all right. So I understand you having a rough morning. All right. So that's the pickleball segment of the podcast.
Yes. And now that it's done, let's move on to, well, you can talk about what you've done. You've put something in your beard.
Yeah. I look a little bit like Beta from The Walking Dead today. I have my little bead here. I'm trying to up my beard game here a little bit. So
well done.
For you to watch. I'm sorry?
Well done, you.
Thank you. I'm doing my best. So, mic models, huh?
Okay, that was a good transition.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Smooth. Well done.
Yeah, right. Well, we got the nonsense out of the podcast early on, and I'm sure there'll be more later.
Right.
No, but like you said, Jody, today's topic is mic models.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So what's a mic model?
Well, it's a microphone that is manufactured to be as flat as possible. And then that manufacturing company then takes that flat as possible response that they know that they get from their manufacturing process. And then they create software that tweaks that to hopefully sound like another mic that you actually want that you can't afford.
Right.
That's a simple way of saying it.
That's a gist of it, right? So you can impart the personalities of these other mics onto this relatively flat mic, right, and get an accurate response. And we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago how I remember seeing this at some point. I'm guessing late '90s. It was
Groove Tubes.
We talked about,
and Antares.
Yeah, Groove Tubes and Antares had a thing where they said, okay, well, input your mic here and you choose your SM57 that you have and you select from a drop down, and now it's going to sound like a U87, right?
And everybody laughs.
Yeah, right. But technology has come a long way. Obviously, since then, with emulation software that we see all the time, whether it's plugins or guitar amplification, whatever it is, and it's now, fairly widespread, I should say, with some of this mic modeling technology. So you're actually listening to me speak into one of these right now.
Yeah,
for what it's worth.
You're a prime user right now.
I am. I am using a Slate ML1 to speak into here. Now, I am not a singer, so And if you hear me sing, you'll know why. But I'd like to have some options when I get vocalists coming here and do tracks for me, or if I'm wherever I am, whatever, or I'm recording acoustic guitar, whatever happens to be, right? I like to have some choices. And I fall into the category that I don't have a favorite mic like you do. You got your C12, right? That works really, really well for you.
Well, yeah.
So since I'm not a singer, I don't have that, but I like the options there, right? So unless you have, a huge mic locker like an Eric Valentine or something, this is a really, really great way, I think, to expand your mic locker without
breaking your bank.
Yeah, exactly.
Mortgaging the farm.
Yeah. So I think they're great. I think they're awesome. I suppose the argument that some people would have would be like, well, I already have I mentioned an 87, right? All right, well, awesome. Good for you. That's great, But for other people, it gives you flexibility for less of an entry price, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if we're going to start going down that little rabbit hole, you've already mentioned a Slate ML1. So let's kind of get into some of the companies that are currently making modeling mics.
Sure. But let me maybe just round off the Slate thing here first, and then we can kind of move forward. So Slate makes two different models. There's an ML1, which is like a condenser mic, and then there's an ML2, which is a dynamic mic, which models different types of microphone in that area. So you have, for different applications that you could use, maybe you don't want to put a condenser mic on your snare drum when you're miking up a drum kit or something like that, right? So there are different ones right there, and those are the two offerings from Slate. And,
right. Some of the other companies that tend to make them, Townsend Labs makes a microphone. And they make a single microphone that is a large diaphragm mic, but it has a front diaphragm and a back diaphragm. And that gives it kind of this 360-degree capability. And that, because of the way it works with its environment, that's how they're doing their modeling on their diaphragms. And then we have yet another company called Antelope Audio.
Yep.
And they kind of do a whole lot of them, actually. They have roughly 5 that we know about.
5, yeah.
I count 5. They have their Edge Go, which is a USB input mic, and it's a little tiny microphone. It's good for people that go on location for podcasts. Mm-hmm. We're not using one of those, unfortunately. Antelope, if you want us to try it, we can do it.
Yeah, no, but that's a good idea too, because the first thing that you might think, well, why would you have a USB mic be this? But if you're doing location recording and stuff, and you still want to get high quality sounds that you can impart this characteristic on later on, I think that's a brilliant idea. Yes. A little bit more possibly of a limited market, but that's a great option. But they have.
But they're filling that niche right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, as they should.
Yes, and their next offering is called the Edge Solo, which is sort of like the Townsend and the ML1. It's a large diaphragm microphone. Then they have their Edge Duo, which is much more similar to the Townsend Labs because it is a 2 large diaphragm mic. And then they have their, I guess this would probably be like the cream of the crop kind of thing. They have their Edge Quattro. And that is a 4-channel dual diaphragm mic, which gives you mid-side and XY, along with Bloomline and 360-degree sound. It's kind of a crazy contraption to get that many diaphragms going at once, but they've done it.
But let's say that you're doing orchestral work.
Well,
that would be fantastic for that, right?
For room sound, it'd be awesome. Yeah, you can capture some pretty amazing things. And then, of course, you get to change it to whatever you want. Yeah. And then they have a 5th one called The Verge, which is more like the ML2 by Stephen Slate. It is a small diaphragm.
Right. So obviously, just rattling those off there, this is something that is... The technology has come a long way, and it's out there, and it's sort of mature. I have yet to hear anybody have one of these and go, ew, I really wish I hadn't bought that. you know?
Right.
So it's a cool thing. And I could be wrong, but I think in the case of both Townsend and the dual diaphragm Antelope offerings, that you can even impart different characteristics on both of the diaphragms.
Yes, I know you can do that on the Townsend Labs. I would assume they'd be able to do the same thing with the Antelope audio as well. Yes.
So that's the options there are kind of crazy when you think about it. You know,
It's
well,
insanity!
I like the Omni to be 87, and I want this to be a C12 or a 800 or whatever it happens to be. That's really, really cool. So you mentioned, obviously, the emulation is happening in the software world.
Yes.
Right. So it's a plugin in your audio. Maybe you should talk a little bit about what kind of plugins we're talking about here. What are they? Are they all, proprietary type of thing, or are they natives, or so? What do we got going for us there?
I'll take Townsend, you take Slate, and then I'll rattle off some stuff about Antelope. How's that sound?
Sounds brilliant.
Okay, so if we're kicking it off here in a slightly different order than what we talked about from the mics, and we're going with the software thing, Townsend Labs is kind of like the big boy on the block in a sense, mainly because they've partnered up with Universal Audio. Now, you don't have to have the Universal Audio in order to run the Townsend Labs mic. But the cool thing about having the Townsend Labs mic in the Universal Audio world is you can use it and model whatever mic it is as you're recording.
Right.
So you don't have to do it after the fact. You can literally record with it and capture that sound as you're doing it. So if you're doing that in console, that's obviously going to be a console plugin that I don't even know what Universal Audio uses as a console style, but it goes right in console. If you're doing it after the fact in your DAW, then you're talking about using your AAX, VSTs, AUs, or RTAS type plugins inside your DAW. And they have that both not only in native format, they have it in Universal Audio's, like if the direct plugin that you'd use from the Universal Audio. So you could go through the Apollo or you can go native when you're doing the Townsend Labs. And the Townsend Labs is kind of cool, as you mentioned just a moment ago. You can change each diaphragm to be a different mic, or you can have it be the same mic as most people would probably do anyway. And they have, because of the two things going on, you get that cardioid, whatever the cardioid,
the Omni
whether it's Omni or Hyper or what have you, that is represented in the mic from both diaphragms.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to what you said there about the UA and tracking with these mics. So normally what would be for somebody like me who's got a Slate, I'm guessing it's the same possibly for the Antelope. But when you don't have to necessarily, you can choose the microphone that you would like to use after the fact to see if it's going to work in context, right? Which would be one, you could argue that that's one of the benefits from this.
Sure.
But you're saying that in the UA format, you can actually, you would print with it as you're recording it, and you don't have to worry about that step afterwards.
That is correct.
My understanding you correct. Right.
That is correct. So that's Unison, what they call the Unison plugin. So your Unison plugins, and if we delve a little bit farther than just the mic modeling, can either be your preamps or your mic model.
Yeah. Okay.
So either way that you want to do it.
Yeah. So it's just one of those making decisions, like you're not making it after the fact, you're committing and you're doing that. So,
that is correct.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. All right.
So tell us about the Slate.
Well, the Slate is native. It's not dependent on any of the hardware apart from the mic, obviously. But the standard formats, it's, audio units, you got VST, AAX, that type of thing. So it works with pretty much all platforms, right? But
what
it's
doesn't these days? That would be terrible, right?
Yeah. And that's a whole nother discussion right there. Right. But so it's just a simple plugin that goes into, if you haven't seen it before, but the Slate plugin format is kind of like a 500 kind of style rack, right? Where you plug everything in. So it just goes in there, just a plug-in with a bunch of drop downs for each mic that you would like to do, which is actually really, really cool to kind of try when you recorded a vocal track. And you can see, oh, I wonder what the 800 sounds like, or what the singer would be sounding like, or what's, again, program dependent. First shot of the show.
Cheers.
Yeah. But it just plugs in, and you can even apply this more excessively. Now, some of these changes can be quite subtle. Actually, it's not like day and night necessarily in all cases, right? So you can impart from obviously 100% of what the mic is sounding like, and then you can actually boost that a little bit more. So if you want to impart more of an extreme version of whatever mic model, you can do that as well. And no latency, obviously. So you can track with it, but you're not tracking the actual sound. You would commit that later, just as you would any other kind of amp sim or preamp or anything like that. But it just plugs in right into your session. It's really, really simple, and it sounds really, really good. So I'm a big fan for somebody, like I said, for me, that I really like the flexibility of it. For different singers and different instruments, all this kind of stuff. But it's just a native plugin, and it works a charm. I haven't noticed any kind of real like CPU hit on it. So it's not like it's going to drag your system to its knees with all the math that's going on in the background. So yeah, 2 thumbs up for me. I'm a big fan. I'm probably going to at some point pick up a couple of the ML2s just for like different instrumentation, and get my hands on those and see what I think with those.
Fun for you.
I think so. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time to be alive, right? Well, technically with this year we're having maybe not so much, but but on the technological sense, yeah, it's a good time to be alive.
One thing I didn't really mention and you didn't really mention is that the Townsend Labs has 30 different microphones that they model.
Jeez.
30 different like models, like from the U47, U87, C12, all kinds of things. The Slate has 18 models that you can get for the ML1, and then there's also 18 models for the ML2.
Yeah, and they're different. They're in different packs as well. So the first pack you get into, first it comes with a mic. It's like, what did I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a good chunk of choices there. It's upwards of 10 that come with it standard. And then there are expansion packs that you can get.
Right.
Personally, for me, I try these and I'm like, I have enough flexibility in these. So some people swear about expansion pack XYZ, whatever happens to be, right?
Whatever floats your boat. It's, as we have said in the past many times, program dependent.
Yeah, there is that. And I was trying to be a good boy here because they've been running sales and things, all of these expansion packs. And I'm like, I really, really want to get this. But I restrained myself in thinking, okay, well, is it a need here or is it a want here? And at that point, it was a want.
It's more of a want, isn't it?
Yeah. So whether it's a small, relatively small investment, it's still one of those things where I'm like, okay, just don't start with the collecting of stuff here. That's going to go unused. But anyway, that's an A side to that. There are more emulations that are part of it that you can get. And one thing, while we're talking about the different kinds here, whenever you're talking about this type of technology, whether it's emulating a microphone in this case, or whether it's an SSL console, you always come across people that say, well, it doesn't sound like mine. Well,
we can kind of say that right now in and of itself with this podcast, because you are currently emulating. Boy, that was not so easy for you to say. You're currently emulating a C12, if I am not mistaken.
I am, yes.
And well, that is going to react differently than the actual C12 that I am using. Plus the fact that your voice sounds different than mine anyway, as it is. So, yes, I
But
agree.
but it's also dependent on which actual microphone that was actually emulated.
Right.
So
they didn't emulate my C12, so it's really not going to sound exactly like my C12.
it's going to be very close.
Yes.
If you were sitting talking into my mic and A being that, it would probably be very, very close, but it's not going to be exact. But I think that's a nonsensical argument, really, when people go into that. It's like, well, it doesn't sound like my. Well, if you have one, then what are you complaining about? You know,
Exactly. And there's just to kind of have an aside with UA recently doing a live thing of Jaquire King, recording a band in the studio, and he was emulating a couple of different things, and they actually liked the emulation better than his actual unit for the particular vocalist that they were recording. So that was kind of an interesting thing where it's like, well, you know what? I actually like the emulation better on this. So.
Yeah, I've heard other people do that with different ones as well. But again, it's like ding, 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 program dependent.
Right.
But it just, I think from my perspective, I try to think of it as like, well, isn't that an awesome problem to have? To be really like spoiled for choice, right? When you got, well, we can do this and this, and it's all about the end product sounding as good as possible, right?
Sure.
Or appropriate as possible, I should say, for the track. So
right. And before we dive into the Antelope situation, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsor. And we're going to follow up here with Antelope Audio's software situation. They also run in AU, VST, and AAX format, so you pretty much cover all your bases on that. Bases. Cover all your mics.
all plug-in formats there.
Right.
Yeah.
You're covering most of your plug-in formats that will get you into most DAWs. In terms of the number of emulations, though, that Antelope has, they have 15 or more than 15 that are available across all their different mics. So obviously all their mics do not get all the emulations. Although I would think that the quad does. That would seem like that one would get all of them, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I have not actually used the Antelope Audio stuff yet. And maybe we should just kind of point out, hey, Antelope Audio, what are you doing? Send us something to try out so we can like say, hey, thumbs up or thumbs sideways. I don't know. So software-wise, Antelope is not quite at the same amount of microphones emulated as the Slate and the Townsend Labs, but they have more mic models to choose from that you can start with as your initial sound. Right. So they're filling more of the niches on the front end. And one would only assume that they'll fill all the back end niches at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's still, I think we could still probably classify this as emerging technology. So, you know, I mean, it's not brand new by any stretch here, but it's, you know, there's going to be more emulations and all this kind of stuff, I'm sure, coming up all the time.
But of course,
but it is fantastic technology. I mean, I'm proudly waving the flag here. I mean, it's so I guess it just kind of comes down to, well, why would you use this? And it's like, well, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you is the better question. Yes. And I would have to state that in working with a Townsend Labs and just trying it out, there are times when not only you know that there's a certain mic that's going to sound good on your voice for whatever application. Like for me, a vast majority of the time, especially with rock and the pop stuff that I tend to do most, the C12 is like hands down, bing, is going to be like the first choice. It just fits my voice for the most part, almost to a T or a glove. And there have been times though, like I just recently did vocals on a track where it was more of like, I don't want to say Americana, but it was definitely a lot more acoustic vibe or acoustic pop. And the C12, especially based on the subject matter of the song
Mm-hmm.
was too bright, too present, too everything.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It was like really like, yeah, it fits my voice really good, but for the song in and of itself, it was the wrong vibe for the tune.
Yeah.
So I happen to have a darker mic, a GT Groove Tubes MD1A, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they make anymore. And what was it? Silver. What's the mic company that kind of took over the Groove Tubes brand name? Was it Silver Audio or something like that?
I'm not sure.
I think it's a company called Silver. It was our whatever Guitar Center's mic line is. I think it's like Silver Audio or something like that. And they were remaking some of Groove Tube's microphones, and I'm not sure they ever did the MD1A, but the MD1A is a all tube mic that is very dark. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to guess that, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that none of these companies have modeled the MD1A, unfortunately. But for this particular song, and I happen to own one, it was perfect. I found the right preamp for it, found the right compression for it, and I was able to dial in the right amount of sizzle from the high end for a darker mic that fit my voice for the quality of this tune. So that was one of those rare instances where it's like, man, that didn't fit right. Although it would have been nice to have, say, the Townsend Labs and be able to try like the Sony.
Yeah.
Or something of that nature, or a C14, which I don't actually have in my possession at the moment. So those are the kind of things where it's like, if you get the choices to go through various mics, you can find not only what's going to help the singer sing better, but also fit the vibe of the song more appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing that you get with, obviously choices, right? When you have, if you're, Blackbird Studios, you have
and you have like everything under the sun.
Right. So, but that's why they have that.
Sure.
It's not just like an investment. It's like, well, we can get you whatever you need for the track.
Right.
Or if you're an Eric Valentine that has, also a huge mic locker, right? So, but it is that flexibility. So unless you are the owner of Blackbird, or you are Eric Valentine or anybody like that, mic models are a great way to kind of get in that similar flexibility that you can need for your tracks. So let's say that you're the engineer and you have a case like you just described, where a singer comes in and you have, well, this is my vocal mic. And again, if that's your vocal mic, that's your mic. That's the one you use. But when you have that flexibility and you go, oh, maybe we should try a different one. Maybe we should try the, an 800 or like you said, or whatever it happens to be, that can only benefit you. Unless it leaves you with so many options that you just get or decision paralysis,
break down
right?
And you cry. It's like, oh my, I can't.
Yeah, I can't make a decision now. But
the one thing though, that would be interesting is whether or not somebody could make a ribbon mic that could emulate other ribbons. That would be tough, I think. But you know what?
But
somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it, and it will be rad, because as much as I like my C12, and it is a very, very expensive mic. So you can get a C12 essentially. How much was your ML1?
They retail around $800,
so
plus tax here, but they're frequently deals. I got mine. It was one of those like Black Friday things. I got mine for $500.
Yikes!
Right,
because a C12 is like $8,000 or more.
There you go. Right. So now I got, yeah. So there's another question there. Okay. So is the difference between your mic and my mic, is that worth
$7,500? Right. So
right, and that's even discounting. I'm going to say
yes, but
because you have to.
Yeah. Well, I don't have to, but I love my C12 and it's a great mic. However, that being said, I just lost my train of thought. Shit.
No, you were talking about ribbon mic and how you're...
I've had the opportunity to sing through an RCA ribbon mic, one of the original RCA type ribbon mics. And those things, at least on my voice, sound like perfection. I mean, the C12 gets very close in terms of quote unquote perfection, but the RCA ribbon, it's like part the sky. I'm coming down. I am like, you're a vocal god at that point, and I would love to have one. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, that a ribbon mic from the RCA era of what I'm talking about is anywhere from 30 to 50 grand.
You better just take two then, right? Yeah.
It's like, how do you afford that? Most people can't.
Right. And then the repair costs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the upkeep, and you got to be very gentle because they're delicate. And it's a nightmare.
Yeah. So mic models, I'm a big fan. Gives me a lot of options, and it gives everybody a lot of options.
Doesn't it now? Yes. Yeah. Anybody that gets one, you should say, or I should say, or we should say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And in that regard, why don't we think that but being that we do these Tuesday tips, you should probably do a Tuesday tip on what various mic models sound like.
Sure.
Through the ML1
That's a
system.
good idea. Yeah. Absolutely. That sounds good.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
All right. So we'll do that for the Tuesday tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Anything else there with that, Jody?
Well, in terms of the mic models, I think we've covered them pretty well. We've discussed like who makes them and the kind of software and where you can use them in your recording chain. No, I think that at this point we kind of delve right into Friday Finds. And with that, because we always started our Friday Finds with you, we're going to cut back to you and say, what did you discover this week that people in podcast land need to know about?
I feel like I should get sponsorship money from Slate this week.
Hey, Steve, wake up.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, they just announced and released a new set of headphones that
But you're not wearing them right now.
I'm not wearing them. I don't have them. I'm intrigued to try them out. But they offer different monitoring solutions. What I mean by that is basically it's new technology that makes the sound like you're coming from a couple of different studio rooms, Energy Studios, a couple of other ones. And they also do it's essentially made to help you make better mixing decisions that are going to translate to different environments. So they even have things where, you can make it sound like you're listening to a boombox. It can be the car stereo. It could be even, the Apple earbuds, that type of thing. And you're giving me a face now that I see. I was doing the same thing first, where it's really, really easy to be skeptical about this.
Well, I'm not thinking skeptical. I'm just thinking this sounds an awful lot like SonarWorks.
Right, but SonarWorks is still not going to put it in. That's going to make your room sound really, really good, but it's your room, not the different environments.
But
right?
You can, let's just say this. SonarWorks, in that regard, you can, if they don't have a model of your headphones to flatten them out, you can send them your headphones and they will make that model for you. It's a little pricey, but they can do it. So it's almost SonarWorks could actually,
but this is different
take it
environments as well,
right? But SonarWorks could technically do that in a sense. Not that they would, but it seems similar.
It's probably it's probably based on the same kind of sort of technology, but I think this goes a little bit step further because it uses all the binaural.
So it's like speakerphone from
all the Altiverb guys.
Altiverb guys, yes. They speakerphone emulated different environments.
I remember that. Right. But no, it's not that. This basically puts your music in. You have to go check out the videos. We'll put a link on with the
will
podcast.
Do that.
But I started reading about it, I'm like, yeah, healthy dose of skepticism, I have to admit. But people are really, really, really raving about them. And I would be interested to check him out. I read something this morning about a guy who had reviewed them, and he said, look, I love my studio. I think he had Barefoot 800s, I think what they're called. Amazing setup, right? He's not, am I going to get rid of them? No. But he said, but this is a really, really good thing that he could try it on different systems and all this kind of stuff, different studios for different mastering applications, that kind of thing. So I'm intrigued. I have thought about another set of headphones here. So let's see. So that's my pick. They're called the VSX, Slate VSX.
Okay.
So that would have to be my my find.
You're fine. For headphones.
Yeah. What about you? What do you got?
I'm cruising through life with a new reverb.
Nice.
Yes.
That's always nice to do, right?
You can never have too many reverb choices. Well, actually, maybe that's not entirely a true
You can never have too many good reverb
You can never
choices.
have too many good reverbs. And iZotope has recently released a brand new reverb known as Neoverb.
Yes.
It's not quite like the Matrix, but it's pretty damn close in terms of its operational functionality.
Yeah.
Neoverb is iZotope's take on simplifying and I don't want to say complicating, but definitely simplifying the reverb process for those that don't have as strong a handle on it.
Right.
And the interface can be either ridiculously simple or stupid complex.
Yeah.
Is a good way of saying it.
Yeah. And this is built a little bit on their sort of like AI engine as well.
Oh,
right?
Definitely they've got an AI engine built into it. So Neoverb gives you like this simplistic screen that has 3 points to it in a sense, where you have a room, a medium-sized reverb, and then a giant hall. And you can drag your little cursor around in there if you want to play around with it to hear what it sounds like with varying mixologies of all three of those kind of concepts in it. In addition to that, it has an AI function, like you mentioned, that you tell it, I want something that sounds dramatic, and how dramatic you want it to be, and whether you want it to be clean or dark or bright or airy or what have you. And then you punch the button and then you play your source audio through it, and it sits there and it's doing its little computational things of whatever based on what you're telling it. Yep. And then it creates this reverb and it will create a pre-EQ curve and a post-EQ curve to help keep the reverb from masking the original source and all that. And it's pretty badass. And I've been using it now since it's been released. I've been doing some tracks for a TV show, and I've been using that reverb specifically on getting the sounds that give me the depth in the tracks for these tracks for this show. And it's working out very nicely. And it's like, wow, that's nice. And they've added a certain functionality that I guess I've only ever seen elsewhere in Logic's Space Designer, thanks to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't implement it. I just pointed it out.
I know you didn't implement it, but I'd never noticed it before. And I'm sure there are other reverbs that are doing this, and I just maybe have not paid quite enough attention. But Neoverb has the ability to pick the pre-delay based on the time of
you can sync it to like a 30-second note or 60th note
30-second, 128, 64th, dotted or triplet versions of those things, eighth notes, quarter notes, what have you, however long you want your pre-delay. And then you don't have to go into some random calculation of like trying to figure out what tempo am I at, what do I want as my little cut for my pre-delay, which is what I've been doing for forever. Trying to figure out my pre-delay. I've got like this handy dandy like chart of like, this is the milliseconds in pre-delay of what you need. And I've always just dialed it in using milliseconds, but Logic's Space Designer does it if you click a certain button, and Neoverb does it if you click a certain button. So it's pretty darn cool. Yeah. In addition to that, it's got a real deep interface for each type of reverb, whether it's the the room or the hall or plate and hall, or not plate, but plate and medium-sized hall, I guess, go together, and then large hall and
the room,
giganto hall, and then just the room. So you can go in and you can dial in certain things for each thing of the room, or you can use a single slider to kind of dial in multiple things at once. So they really did their homework when it came to this reverb, and it's got a real nice sound to it based on what you do with it. And the AI works quite well as well. So my pick is the Neoverb from iZotope.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, one thing that I think is a real cool thing with that is that it can be as simple as you want, but you still have the complexity there to adjust if you want it to.
Yes.
So it's a cool one. I like it. I like it as well.
Yeah, it was designed with the beginners in mind that don't know as much about reverb, and it allows for that. And then it allows for the high-end pros to really get into the nitty-gritty workings of every little nuance inside of it, which is really quite cool.
Yeah, definitely. Really like the tweakability.
Yes, very, very tweakable. Very, very tweakable.
All right, Jody.
So that pretty much wraps up our episode for this week of our podcast, now inserted with Friday Finds in it. And as a note, if you are listening at this point, still, we ask you to go to the website, sign up for our email list. If you're really loving what we're doing, hit the little donation button. We really appreciate it. And on top of that, tell a friend. Or if you're Wella Balsam hair shampoo products, tell 2 friends.
Yeah.
So, and there it is. And with that, I'm going to say, see ya later.
See you later, Jody. Have an awesome day.
You too. And everybody out there, we'll see you on Tuesday and next Friday.